Welcome to the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show. My name is Agnes van Rhijn. I'm a life and business success mentor for female entrepreneurs and small business owners who want to be successful, whatever that means to them, but on their own terms. Today at the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show, it's my privilege to be interviewing Joella Bruckshaw. Joella set out in the NHS in a London teaching hospital as a psychiatric social worker. She went on to teach women assertiveness, run her own communication consultancy and design, and delivered personal growth and leadership courses in all but the corporate sector. In the 90s, she trained as a mediator and mediated, trained, supervised, and assessed mediators for the Family Mediators Association. In 2000, she became a full-time coach, and in 2004, she moved to London to set up a new business in the corporate sector. Welcome to the Woman Who Makes Things Happen show, Joella. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
So tell us about it. I'm so curious to find out how someone without any experience in the corporate sector can succeed in the corporate sector. So start wherever you want.
Okay, well, you mentioned that I started out in the NHS, and I've come a long way since then. It was a big learning for me to move from the NHS into the private sector. And I did that by teaching assertiveness. And, there was a long period where I had children. And at that time, I was living in Sheffield. So I brought my children up in Sheffield. And when the last one was leaving home, I decided I needed a man in my life. And, sort of made that a project and found...
I love it. Make that project. Okay.
Next box to tick. And, found myself a Dutch businessman who had just quit working for Shell. He'd taken early retirement, and he wanted to retrain as a psychotherapist. And we fell for each other. And, in the sort of warm, rosy glow of love, he suggested to me that I could probably do what I did in the corporate sector. And he knew all about that. And so, in this sort of moment of madness, we sold our houses and ran away to London. His was in North Yorkshire and mine was in South Yorkshire. We ran away to London. And it wasn't completely mad because we did actually have children in London at that time. Living
there was at least something.
There's some common sense in there somewhere, but not a whole lot. And anyway, we arrived in London, and he immediately went into psychotherapy training, and we moved into a new house in London, in a new community, with a new relationship. Both of us starting on new careers,
wow.
Which was. It's like basically too many new things.
Oh, gosh.
And, we knew that we had done our sums a little bit, and we worked out that we probably have enough money if we didn't earn anything to keep us going till we were about 72. Well, that calculation wasn't right. And, with the cost of living,
in London,
and us falling up, this was in 2003. Well, we fell off a cliff in 2008. And, so, that made a difference to calculations. But anyway, there I was, first morning, new corporate role. I was on the phone, cold calling very senior people whose addresses I got from the reference side. I mean, we didn't even, weren't even using Google to that extent at that point. And just ring them up saying, excuse me, would you like me to coach you? And hoping to God they'd say no.
Oh, yes, of course. I was waiting for you.
But in actual fact, I was incredibly lucky because the second client that I got, I can't remember what the first one was, but the second client I got turned out to be incredibly senior at one of the 4 big audit firms.
Mm-hmm.
And, over the period of 18 months, he paid me £75,000
Not bad.
Him. Which, I can hardly believe now, because after 2008, of course, you couldn't earn that kind of money.
No, absolutely.
but I would never have even begun to ask for that amount of money if my husband hadn't been quite senior at Shell and kind of understood that unless I did ask for a full amount, he wouldn't take me seriously. And so, it was a very hilarious, moment when I was on the phone to him trying to persuade him that this was a really good deal. And my husband had told me that I had to have a list of reasons going from the weakest to the strongest, and that I was to read through my list and then wait after I'd said each one for him to respond and not interrupt. And then we did this, and I was, I had wait printed in big letters.
It's so funny because a lot of things that I wanted to bounce back, but I thought it was better to wait. So to start with, I hadn't realized that he's Dutch, and you know that I'm Dutch. So the interesting thing that I find to start with, and that's typical stereotypes, of course, is to imagine a Dutch person, men in particular, doing that type of transition, completely life upside down, from a senior position to that type of business activity, and then starting the life from scratch. But then I recognize him in all the advice he gave you. I mean, that's very typically Dutch.
It was so funny. I mean, and with this guy, we got to number 3 and he caved in. I never even got to my strongest reason. But anyway, I mean, if it hadn't been for him, I certainly would not have even contemplated doing something like this.
Well, I must say that for a start, having a client like that, it really helps build your self-confidence, of course.
It was wonderful. But I think it wasn't, that really wasn't the end of the journey, because he kept me going for quite a long time. But, in 2008 came, then, the shit hit the fan again.
Yeah.
And I really had to look at my whole business proposition. And there was a point when, being qualified as a coach became more important.
Yeah.
I hadn't got any qualifications, so I got loads and loads of experience, but I didn't have the network. And so I decided to go and, I lost a job because I couldn't say that I had a qualification specifically for coaching. So I thought, right, I'll get myself trained as an executive coach, and it'll be great because I'll be able to I'll be able to create a network, and I'll be able to benchmark my skills against those others that I'm in competition with. And indeed, it was incredibly helpful, although not so helpful about the network, surprisingly, because ultimately it still didn't change how I looked on paper. I'm not a corporate animal. Although what I have is incredibly useful to corporates. But if they don't know that, then,
that's the challenge. Coming from the corporate world, that's what I've been seeing everywhere. I come from the corporate world, and I have worked with the corporate world as an executive coach. So I did not have that problem. But every time I've seen someone who was not from the corporate world trying to enter that world, that's why I'm so curious about how you did it, because they never made it, because on paper it doesn't work. So unless you have the right introduction, it was challenging.
Oh, completely. It really was. And I think one of the things that I did get from that course, though, was understanding about my signature proposition. Because the particular course I did, which was the Academy of Executive Coaching, were very keen on your signature presence. And from that, I really began to understand that it was pointless me trying to compete with people who had the corporate experience that I didn't have. What I had to do was absolutely major on what I personally bring to the table.
Absolutely.
And that absolutely was where my strength lay, and also in the end where my proposition lay. Because in sort of working out who I was, I actually realized that, oh, right, well, that's what I need to help other people do. That's what I really know about. And because I'm very creative and very visual, I created this way of using images to help women who I felt very drawn to work out who they are, because I believe very strongly that women are operating very often in a male-defined environment, and they feel on the back foot. They kind of forget what they uniquely bring. And I did some research and I interviewed senior women and asked them how they got to the top. And what really came across was that basically all the ones who were successful were uncompromisingly doing things in their own way. And they didn't much care whether anyone else liked it or not.
And I think it's a difference with what happened, I would say probably 1 or 2 decades ago, where women were entering that male-dominated world and were copying men because of that, because otherwise at least they thought they would not be accepted, when now there is a real change to exactly what you described. The ones who are succeeding definitely are who they are, and don't care what others think of it. Yeah.
Well, I think they basically trust how they do things. And I also kind of drew out from this research that I reckon that apart from that, there were 5 different areas that women find particularly difficult to overcome, which they need to overcome if they're going to be successful at senior level. And those were being strategic, being visible, asking for help, setting boundaries, and talking about money. And those are all things that women are not encouraged or trained to do.
Yeah, sometimes the strategic part can be there, but the 4 others are absolutely missing. Definitely. Yeah.
No, I think we just don't get any encouragement, unless we happen to have had circumstances in our upbringing that mean that we happen to end up being good at that. I mean, one thing I've often heard is girls who are the only girl in a family of more boys, like maybe one daughter and 4 brothers.
Yeah.
Where they learn, or they've had some experience that's given them insight into how you handle men. How you all the different ways. Because I mean, one woman I was sitting next to only on Tuesday at an event at the London Business School, she was the managing director of a company she had been for years. This was a financial company. And she was telling me that she was the youngest daughter of 4 brothers. And she said to me, I was never the strongest person. Everybody was always stronger than me. So I had to find ways.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I think my argument is, well, if you are being who you are without apology, and this way of working with women, I call it intuitive personal branding, and it's finding out what they are about and creating their own strapline that sings to them, that they completely get themselves.
Yeah, full alignment.
Yeah, and they're silly lines that really only mean something to them. I think I've got some up here on the wall. I mean, one of them is an unflappable big picture woman. It's a kind of, characterization that gets them to a T.
Yeah.
And makes them very happy and enthusiastic, and is it's their energy that, they then can say, well, okay, how can I apply that energy, that resourcefulness, to overcoming these issues, these 5 areas that, because if you say to women, well, okay, so how would that woman do it, that unflappable big picture woman, how would she deal with being strategic? Then they go sort of, well, they know.
Because they know. No, of
they
course.
know what to do.
Yeah.
Know what to do. But it's how do you trigger that reaction? And I mean, basically what I've done is package that and approach individual corporate women. And, for those who are high enough in the pecking order, they will have their own budget. And, for those who are not, they will, sometimes they feel confident enough to approach the organisation and say, I'd like to do this, but hey, then you get caught up, in a conversation with HR that may mean that, somebody else that they want to bring in, and it all kind of, the energy of it disappears. And so anyway, a lot of women will pay for themselves to do that.
So Joella, because well, I know as well, but that these are the areas that they should be working on. But from which angle do they approach you? Because they do not necessarily know that that is what is missing.
Well, I mean, what I do, and I mean, I think what most people who are selling anything do, is they go to the place where the people are who want who should be wanting what they're selling. And that's the whole point of having a niche. You know, because if you have a niche, then it's very specific, and then it's easier to find the people who should be interested in that niche. Well, my niche is helping women operate at executive level successfully. So obviously I go to the places where women who want...
Okay, so that's what they are looking for, and then what you bring is the how you do it. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Completely. And you know, because what you want is, if you make your proposition, somebody to say, oh yes, I need to talk to you.
Absolutely. So this is really interesting, because whether the viewers, the listeners of this program are working in the corporate world or not, the approach is the same. So you were entering a market where you had in principle no experience, no background, so the justification was more difficult, but you did look at what is my difference and how does that match a need that is there, and the same applies to anyone in business, as you mentioned. I'd like to go back, if you don't mind, to the early stage of what you were talking about, because that happens as well. Is this situation where you and your partner or husband were both starting from scratch again, and so how do you make the choices to decide who is priority or not, if applicable? I mean, how do choices like that work when you're both in a startup situation?
Well, I think our needs were very, very different. I think our finances depended on us both succeeding, and probably me succeeding more than him, because he had his Shell pension, which was generous.
Yeah, okay, and makes a difference.
It wasn't so important for him to be earning so much money, because even if he worked from morning till night, which he does now, he still isn't going to be earning a huge amount. You know, he's not going to be earning the amount that will make the difference. Yeah. Whereas the money that I earn, that really can make the difference, because the ceiling on what I can earn is far, far higher. I mean, he's doing what he's doing because it's it's a calling.
Yeah. So he's passionate about it. He wants to do it. So the needs are not the same, as you mentioned. Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, he'd do it for nothing. I would probably do it for nothing, but I can't afford to do it for nothing.
I understand. That's a situation that a lot of us know.
And it's good. It's good. I think probably at my stage in the proceedings, although it doesn't feel like because we went through a point. I mean, he said to me, look, there'll be a curve and we'll go down and we'll probably go into the red and then we'll come back up again, and I went, red? We can't go into the red. I wasn't, being a woman, I wasn't used to taking risks in the way that he is. And I had no conception of how far down we would go. I mean, we were literally, selling the furniture. And, I remember us walking around the streets of London carrying a Persian carpet, trying to get someone to buy it.
Oh, God.
To make ends meet, I tell you, it was that bad. And it wasn't until we got to the backs against the wall point that we got it. About, oh, right, this is really serious. We're going to have to. And then then I think we really kind of got the plot. And then I think began to just seriously put two and two together.
It's once more a story of how it is possible to reinvent yourself, whatever the circumstances. There are so many of them. Quite often when women in particular are in a situation like that, they think it's the end of the world, but it's not. It's challenging, it's difficult, but it's...
I think we women are quite sheltered in many ways. You know, although we take flack in the family situation, and that's very challenging and difficult, I think this thing about being out in the world and making your mark, we don't have very good training for that, you know, unless we happen to be, you know, expressly given that training specifically because our parents decided that was what we needed.
Which is quite rare.
It's quite unusual. I think I wish, looking back, that my mother had sort of trained me for something other than earning pin money and supporting my husband in his career. You know, which is what the training I got was. So it took me a while to get it, but, you know, actually nobody's going to do it but me. And, you know, there's still times when I'd love to be supported, but hey.
Yeah, hey. So if you look back, what would you say have you found the most challenging, and what tips would you give to women going through something like that, even if the circumstances would be different?
I think the most challenging thing for me has been to take myself seriously, based on what my set of talents are.
Interesting.
You know, my talents are the sort of talents you don't win prizes for at school. You know, they're things like being joyful, you know, having a sense of humour, being supportive and encouraging, being perceptive, being caring, having a lot of personal, you know, human. I'm very much a human being, you know, and you don't get points.
No, definitely not.
Of being a human being. And yet it's absolutely the basis of everything that I do. You know, being able to connect with people, bring compassion and genuine, you know, being able to generate trusting relationship, having people feel safe enough to be prepared to tell me that they don't know how to do something. You know, that's, I mean, and it's very easy, especially faced with the corporate sector. You know, everybody's sort of adding up pennies all the time. You know, for me to make the proposition to these people that, look, if you just let go a bit and be a bit more human and have a bit more fun, things will be a lot better. It's very hard for them to.
It's very hard to grasp for them, definitely. Yeah.
You know, it's a difficult proposition to make. But I think it's only when I've learned to say, well, look, when they kind of challenge me, just to say, well, look, here I am. You know, you've told me that you want to be able to do that. I can only build a relationship with you that will have you feel excited about doing that.
Yes.
And then you and I will work together and make it happen. You know, and that, you cannot do that with people unless you are completely the genuine article. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. You definitely need to walk your talk there.
You know, they know immediately if you're just saying, yeah, come on, let's go. Something is not real. They know that. They absolutely know. Everything says, I don't think so. And they walk away.
No, also true. You definitely need to be aligned yourself and walk your talk. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, now I know that actually I can't help doing that. That's what I do. That's what my qualities are for. So that's what I do.
Lovely. So you end up doing what you love and loving what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But in a natural way, because you've embraced it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's ridiculous, really, because it's not an easy journey, but it's the only journey that I can take. You know, and maybe I could have made it a whole lot easier, but I didn't know how. And you know, this is working. This is great.
Yeah, and that's what's important, because you add a lot of value to those women who certainly at that type of levels will have by ripple effect a lot of influence on the people around them as well. So yeah.
Well,
Excellent.
I can see now that I'm lucky to be, I can see I'm lucky, but I can also see that they're lucky to meet somebody like me in their environment. There are not many people like me.
Oh, no, definitely not. That's why I run away from it. I did work 8 years with the corporate world, but I really didn't like what I was seeing there. So I don't know, of course, how different it is in a British environment compared to a French environment, because although working in international firms, I was working mainly with French corporations, in fact, even if they were international. So it's imprinted there. So I don't know what that difference could be, and if there is any. But
you said you were internal.
No, not internal. I was working as an executive coach with mainly French companies, even if they were functioning internationally.
Oh, okay. And did you do that through the HR department?
Quite often it was via the HR department with the type of challenges that you described. In a few cases it was, and that's ideal, of course, when you can enter directly via the CEO or so, then that's different.
Yeah.
That becomes completely different. I did a very interesting change management project thanks to that. But it's less female at that level also, although I'm going back a bit now, of course. It's already so many years ago, so that is slowly changing, but more men than female, of course. Joella, I'm becoming conscious of time, unfortunately, so tell us where people can find you, because even if my audience is a lot of business owners, however, it is circulating also in, on LinkedIn, etc. So your interview will be visible in other areas.
So, do you want my email address or your
website? Whatever is easiest for you. Where people can find you easiest.
Well, you can get my website is www.joellabruckshaw.co.uk, which is probably the easiest way to contact me.
Yeah, because then I suppose there are links
and something that people probably would be interested to know is that in answer to an earlier question, one of the ways in which I get work is to offer senior women or women who are running their own companies a free 2-hour coaching session.
Mm-hmm.
The only proviso being that they make a decision about whether they would like to work with me or not. Uh-huh. And that's a great win-win for everyone, because, if they don't want to work with me, they know someone else that they'll be able to pass that favor on to, who would be perhaps very appreciative and would deepen their network, make their network stronger, to have given that favor to someone who isn't going to.
Absolutely. Yeah. 2 hours of coaching. That's very valuable. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they always get value.
Of course. Excellent. Joella, thank you so much. This really was very interesting, a slightly different type of interview than the ones that I'm normally running. So I find that very interesting. And my own curiosity, of course, coming from the corporate background myself. So thank you so much. And for the viewers and the listeners, if you're interested in reinventing your life or going after your dream or wanting to be successful but on your own terms, I'm not as generous as Joella is. I'm giving a 1-hour complimentary consultation, and to do so that you can book a meeting with me, an appointment with me on my website, and that is agnesvanrhijn.com. So the usual 3 W's and then ANYESVANRHIJN.com. Thank you, and see you with the next interview next week. Bye.
Bye.